the activities. Mr. Speaker, this is not enough. The central government must immediately intervene to save lives. The people are suffering. We also need additional supporting staff to be deployed to Winneba. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Health must direct other health professionals to support the directorate to enable them contain this unfortunate outbreak. Mr. Speaker, without more, I would want to rest my case and call on the Minister of Health that within a week he should come to this House to brief this House on efforts made thus far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I proceed to take contributions from honorable members. Honorable Kweku Riget Egan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thanks for the honorable minority leader for making this very important statement, which is not only affecting Ifutu, but actually the whole of Central Region at the moment. And I know that a lot of effort is being made. It is cholera we are talking about, which is obviously affecting the people of Central Region. Mr. Speaker, some of the issues are actually to do with sanitation, which not only the health minister, but I expect that the minister who is responsible for sanitation now will also move in there and find out exactly what is going on. I know the doctors are working around the clock, but as cholera is, it's usually ahead of the attempt to try and curb it. And I'm very happy that my honorable brother has made this statement, which is seriously affecting the Central Region. I think last week we were talking about meningitis here, and I know a lot has been done about that. But now the Central Region is actually suffering from this cholera outbreak. And I hope that all the institutions, the health, move down there to make sure that the issue is actually brought under control. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Honorable Patrick Yabwama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to make these brief comments on the statement ably made by the minority leader. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious public health issue, a very serious one as such. And in 2014, cholera took the lives of more than 200 of our citizens, Mr. Speaker. So if this issue is cropping up again, then we require of the Minister of Health to appear before the House to brief the good people of this country on the steps that he is taking to curb the rise of this issue. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, CSM is also on the increase, and it's taking some lives. And I believe that it is very, very important for the Health Minister to appear before the House before the end of this week to brief and update Ghanaians on the steps being taken by government on this very important matter. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Dr. Sandari.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the statement on cholera outbreak ably made by the minority leader. Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely unacceptable for any district, any community, in fact, for any country to record a case of cholera. And that's why Even one case of cholera is considered an epidemic because of the importance and the severity of it. If we recall, this cholera outbreak started somewhere in October 2024, around Adan. And the inability of us as a country, our health system, to contain one case can lead to the spread of that one case to other parts of the country. And that is why today, the outbreak is serious in Ifutu. Not just that place. Records show that about more than half of the districts in Central Region have been, recording cholera cases. Mr. Speaker, we have to do something. Our health system must be able to respond to this outbreak and contain the disease. It has the potential to spread to all the regions in this country. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the professor who taught I and my colleagues microbiology said, a case of cholera simply means that you have eaten somebody's feces. Simple. That is a summary of it. You have eaten somebody's fecal matter, either through the water that you drink, through the food that you eat. You have just eaten somebody's fecal matter. And that's why I started by saying it is unacceptable, because you don't only measure the economic status or how developed a country is by economic indicators. These epidemic outbreaks, cholera, typhoid, all go to measure whether indeed we're a developed country or we are beginning to develop. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I support the maker of the statement that the Ministry of Health must come, to educate us or to show how well they are fighting this outbreak of cholera and other epidemic conditions. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. I call on Honorable Minority Chief Whip.
Speaker, just to commend my leader for show of leadership to the people of Ifutu, the prompt response. However, just a few observations. First of all, if we recall, last week, the Honorable Dr. Sandari had raised a matter on meningitis. And I also recollect when the Chief Whip presented the business statement, I nudged him that the outbreak of cholera, unverified report had it that it's spreading within about 5 regions. So I drew his attention. Earlier on, Speaker, per your wisdom, you had given some consequential directives that the Ghana Health Service should attend upon the House. And I'm told that they were billed to appear tomorrow. So may I humbly suggest or request of you, if you may, vary your earlier orders, that instead of the Ghana Health Service appearing, because as at that time, we had to fall on the Ghana Health Service because the minister had not been sworn in. Now the minister has been sworn in. Yeah, so the minister has been sworn in. The proper thing to do is that we should get the sector minister to come here. It has to be ASAP. Tomorrow will not be out of place. And then I'm also hearing that the Minister for Local Government could also be added, since the index of sanitation concerns are also in there, which cannot be glossed over. So it has to be as soon as possible. And Doc, I couldn't have agreed more with you when you said that it is totally unacceptable in this time and age. Some time back, the concern has been availability of vaccines. I think now is not the case. It's not the case. But if it is, we need to hear from the sector minister, and then we can position ourselves. This House can position itself in terms of action lines going forward. But it's a sad story. It's a sad story in this time and age. This thing shouldn't be happening to our country. And I hope, Speaker, you accede to my call that Donald Akando be programmed tomorrow, or we can notify him today, and then the next day he can appear duly to speak to this concern. Speaker, it's sad. At this time and age, cholera is killing lives, and CSM has already killed 14 lives, as I'm told, as of last week. But let me commend the Ghana Health Service, though. We are told there is distribution of free vaccines and vaccination, and the people there, as we do know, poverty levels are quite grinding over there. People are not made to pay for the vaccine, which I think is good. If it could be sustained, it will go a long way to curb the menace. Speaker, I thank you, and I commend our leader for the show of leadership, but particularly we need the minister on this matter. I thank you.
Honorable Gisela Tete.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also commend the maker of the brief statement, Honorable Afenyo Makin, for this. Mr. Speaker, somewhere last year in November 2024, my constituency, Awutu Senya West, also had a cholera outbreak. Now, one thing I observed was the rapid response of the district health system. They quickly formed a platform called Cholera Rapid Response Team and put me on it as well, as a member of parliament. And so I was watching every day. They were having Zoom meetings, the PowerPoint presentations to see the traceability and all. I also was privy to that, and it kept me informed. So I also likewise told my communicators that when you go onto the community radio or information centers, tell people that there's cholera around. And when I was doing the campaign too, by the time I'm done talking to, I also tell them the same thing. Because sometimes people have to be reminded, and maybe they may not take it that serious. I said, please just try and eat hot food. That's the simplest solution to this. I have somebody in Winneba now, a friend, who called me and said, Madam, I'm in hospital. What is it? Because sometimes we refer cases from Awutu Senya West to Winneba. I had cholera. I said, oh, how come? What did you eat? That was the first question I asked him. He said, I had a millet drink. And that brought to mind the issue of food safety. So much as I support what Dr. Sandari said, there are a lot of food vendors. We all have them. I'd plead with my colleagues that let us be proactive also, and let's do some education on the food vendors. It could be the water they are using to make their food. It could be the environment. It could be just something small that they have been doing as a routine, but this time it got caught. So my plea is that as colleagues over here, use your community radio, use the information centers. We lost 3 people, 3 of my citizens in the constituency, a child and 2 adults, which was very unfortunate. But at least I will commend the district health team and the district health director that they took some steps and they kept me involved and informed. So I also added my weight to it. I had to give them fuel and a few other things that they needed. So I would plead with anybody here, those of us from the central region, where this cholera epidemic is happening. It can actually be anywhere at all because of the mode of transmission. So my plea is, please get onto community radio and information centers and tell our citizens that this is what is happening. Even if the minister comes here to come and give a rundown or edition of what exactly they are doing, we also have to see in our own backyards and help our district health directorates to get certain things sorted. It may be some logistics which we can help with or otherwise. Please, time is of essence because people's lives are at stake here. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I proceed to give the floor to Haji Aladi Ayamba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Don't worry, it will come there. Mr. Speaker, I rise to contribute to the statement ably made by the leader on the other side. Mr. Speaker, I think the issue of cholera has always come to our attention. But there are so many questions and so many activities that need to be undertaken. There is the need for education, especially in the various communities. And those who would have to undertake this education are the health personalities or persons. How will they get there? They need a lot of support. And just as my colleague, Honorable Gisela, has just mentioned, sometimes it's not their fault that they don't go to the communities. Means of transport is number one. Sometimes, and when there is means of transport, lack of fuel. We need to give them that support. We need to also look at the budget of the Ministry of Health so that at least the contingency should be in such a way that they will be able to come out and support the health sector to handle issues that come up without any questioning. In the villages, someone will say, you say it's a matter of maybe someone who would have eaten fecal matter. How? How come it that am I a fool? No. There are so many things that lead to it. Insects, flies. Many people even do not think of washing their hands properly before they go and touch food. I was so sad somewhere last week when I heard a woman was being interviewed in the Upper West. She had lost 2 of her children just in a matter of some 2-3 hours. And the other one was lying there, and you could see that it's a very young woman. Meanwhile, she had no way of even going to the hospital. She's, according to her, when she was narrating, to even get money to go to the hospital was a problem. And I think that the intervention of the health directors who quickly went to her aid and even went to the hospital there was very, very helpful. But then, we as a nation, we need to continue to give education on the issue of even water that is being used for the planting of vegetables, lettuce and other things. I watched another documentary where fecal water, water that chemical, all other things, and they were using it to water plants. Now, most of these, especially the lettuce, we go in, we say, oh, I want salad. I want salad. And the thing is not treated. The salad is not treated. It's not properly washed. The vegetable, it has already, I mean, you don't just see that there is a problem because you think that you are eating the right and you need vegetables. But what it would have come out with to come to that very restaurant and to your table is what you do not know. We need to give that education to our people. And I will also plead with us all that we shouldn't look at it that once it's in the central region, it cannot get to the Upper East. Our surroundings, the cleaning of our environment, when we use the washrooms, and for that matter, let me just say the toilets, and then we get back the children themselves, teach them how to wash their hands. Because for them, when they even go to toilet and there's nobody around, Mr. Speaker, let me make this point clear. They may even go and take food and begin eating without washing their hands. And it leads to a lot. So, Mr. Speaker, I really appreciate the maker of the statement, and I hope that we are able to curtail this menace that has come, and that it shouldn't escalate to other communities or other regions. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Honourable members, in view of the fact that we have 4 other statements, can we bring contribution to this particular statement to an end? Leadership.
Speaker, I agree with you. Speaker, let me wind up on this one by saying that indeed, last year, the the cholera outbreak began last year. In October, 5 regions were announced to have suffered this: Western, Central, Greater Accra, and the rest. And between December 9th and 29th, over 35 persons had died, and over 4,800 cases had been reported. So it's very important that I join my minority whip in saying that in getting the Minister for Health to come address the House on meningitis and the other matters, he should also prepare and address the House on the cholera outbreak and the steps the ministry has been taking since last year to deal with the matter, so that the outbreaks which has entered this year can be curtailed. Speaker, with these words, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I direct the minister responsible for health to appear before the House within 1 week to brief the House on all the health issues raised on the floor.
Speaker,
I so direct.
I just contacted the minister. He's on the field in monitoring the situation, so he'll be here on the 18th if the House would.
I have taken all those things into consideration in asking that he should appear before us within 1 week.
1 week. Very well.
Yes.
We are guided.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable members, we have students from some educational institutions visiting the House. They are from the following schools: All Nations University, led by Dr. Priscilla Bempa, a lecturer. They are from New Joburg South. They are 48 in numbers. We also have students from Kwame Danso Senior High Technical School, led by Owusu Dankwa Achiampong, a teacher, and they are from Sene West, 75 in number. Honourable members, on behalf of the House and on my own behalf, I wish our dear students a fruitful visit to the House. Honourable members, we have admitted a statement in the name of Honourable Rita Na Odole Soa, MP for Dadekotopong constituency, on the International Day of Women and Girls. Honourable Rita Na Odole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commemorate the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, a day that highlights the need for gender equality in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. Last year, in this August House, I highlighted the critical role of women in STEM and the persistent barriers hindering their full participation. Today, I reaffirm our commitment to breaking these barriers and empower women and girls in science. Ghana has made notable strides in promoting gender inclusivity in science. We celebrate outstanding women such as our very own Dr. Grace Ayensu Dankwa, MP for Esikado Ketan, who has made remarkable contributions to medicine and public health. As a double board certified surgeon with expertise in trauma and reconstructive surgery, she has dedicated her career to saving lives both in Ghana and abroad. She is the founder of Healing Hands organization, which provides free medical care to underserved communities. Additionally, she has made history as a parliamentarian and continues to advocate for improved health care policies. Mr. Speaker, we also recognize Dr. Amasewa Nekwe Tete, an educationist and policy leader whose advocacy has strengthened STEM education policies in Ghana. As a Deputy Director General at the Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, she has influenced national education reforms and promoted STEM opportunities for young girls. Her work with UNESCO and various educational institutions has been vital in ensuring gender inclusivity in science and technology. Additionally, we celebrate our popular maths and science quiz mistress, Professor Elsie Efa Hoffman, a leader in engineering education at the University of Ghana, and many other distinguished female scientists who continue to inspire future generations. However, Mr. Speaker, despite these remarkable achievements, women remain significantly underrepresented in STEM. According to the 2024 Ghana Statistical Service report, women constitute only 24% of professionals in STEM-related fields, with even lower participation in engineering and computer sciences. The gap is wider in rural areas, where cultural and financial barriers prevent young girls from accessing quality science education. Mr. Speaker, we cannot afford to leave half of our population behind in this rapidly advancing technological era. I therefore call on the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology and Innovation to enhance policies that support STEM education for girls. The government Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics, that's STEM, schools initiative is a commendable step, but we must ensure these efforts reach underserved communities. Mr. Speaker, fostering an interest in science begins at an early age. Research shows that girls are just as capable as boys in mathematics and science. Yet societal stereotypes and a lack of female role models discourage them from pursuing careers in these fields. I urge the Ghana Education Service to integrate mentorship programs into the curriculum, connecting young girls with accomplished women scientists who can inspire and guide them. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the private sector and academic institutions must actively support women-led research and innovation. Science and technology drive economic growth, and Ghana cannot reach its full potential if we continue to sideline the talents of half of our population. I encourage the establishment of more effective research grants and incubator programs, specifically for female scientists and entrepreneurs. Mr. Speaker, let us reaffirm our collective commitment to empower women and girls in science, ensuring that they are not just participants, but leaders in shaping Ghana's scientific and technological future. A nation that invests in its women invests in progress, and Ghana must lead by example. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I take contribution from the Deputy Minority Whip.
Right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is the International Women's Day for Science, and I'd like to wish each and everyone in the science faculty, I want to wish them happy anniversary. It's the 10th anniversary for the celebration of girls and women in science. Mr. Speaker, Ghana has made notable strides in science, and I'd like to commend the maker of this statement, for taking notice of such commendable actions that have been made by a number of our women who are already in science. And I must say that in Ghana, inclusion of girls and women in science education remains significantly very low. But it is important that we make certain efforts and take certain strides to ensure that the challenges that ranges from gender stereotyping, lack of role models, cultural perceptions, financial constraints, and limited mentorship opportunities are made away with. Many young girls, particularly in the rural areas, still face systematic barriers in providing in preventing them from pursuing STEM education. Mr. Speaker, the underrepresentation is a critical challenge that must be addressed if we are to achieve sustainable development goals. Mr. Speaker, this year's theme is a call to action, a commitment to do something on skating, unearthing the potential of every girl and woman who inspires to contribute towards the world of science. Mr. Speaker, you agree with me that when we speak about science, it's a way of living. And it is important to break down the barriers of cultural stereotypes, economic constraints, and systemic biases that limit female participation in STEM fields. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the Ghana Education Service, must introduce and implement STEM-friendly curriculum at the primary and secondary level. According to the Ghana Education Service, early exposure is critical in sparking interest and then building competencies in these science among girls and women in our country. Mr. Speaker, the government must expand scholarships opportunities specifically for girls pursuing STEM-related industries must be encouraged to show interest in mentorship programs, internships, and research gains that support the generation of female scientists. We need to collaborate and promote the achievement of Ghanaian women in science initiative. The highlights role models can inspire and provide tangible proof that success in STEM will be achievable. Mr. Speaker, there is something that we also need to take cognizance of. We know that there have been a number of, the maker of the statement have mentioned about 3 distinguished individuals who has contributed successfully in the science space. I would also like to add my voice in celebrating women like the Vice Chancellor of KNUST, Professor Rita Akosia Dixon, for the role he plays, especially when they are admitting students into the science courses. He takes particular interest to ensure that girls, especially from the vulnerable areas like the villages, who have shown clear intelligence, those people, whether they are able to financially support their education, he makes sure he takes them in and ensure that they are well equipped with computers, and also give them some level of scholarships to ensure that they will be able to pursue the science courses very well. I also want to make mention of one Professor Ibok Odro. He is one of the people who have shown, he has been the first dean of the sciences department, the general science department, and he has shown interest by instituting a program which is Total Technology for Girls Initiative, equipping young women with essential skills in coding and showing robotics and digital literacy. These are the women that we need within our society to ensure that they can adequately promote the needs of children. I can also name one Dr. Peggy Otibuati, who is the Director of Science in Africa for the UNESCO and current Director of African Academy of Sciences, who has been instrumental to narrowing the gender gap in STEM through initiatives like Girls in Science Empowerment Initiative. These are the people that we need to celebrate, and we also need more role models to take up, because if we don't identify these role models and showcase them appropriately, there is no interest developed by our young girls and our women to ensure that we incorporate science into our way of living, into whatever we do. And I believe that if we are able to do it this year, as we celebrate the 10th anniversary, each and every one over here should sit down and imagine a world where we have scientists in every aspect of our economy, and how these science situates in our way of doing things. I'd like to commend the maker of the statement and add my voice that we should all imagine if we have women in all aspects of our discipline and backing on the approach of adopting science in whatever we do, we will be able to make a good stride in our economic development. With these few words, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will give the floor to Chumesi, Honorable Chumesi Ampofu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. And I also commend the maker of the statement. Mr. Speaker, science and technology is something that is driven the world. Therefore, it's important for us to appreciate and support our lectures, or those are in science. And science and technology is practical. Therefore, our women or ladies need to be encouraged. Mr. Speaker, if you're able to encourage them and they're able to do more, when they finish school, they don't struggle to get jobs. Because nowadays, the world is all about science and technology. Mr. Speaker, we know our science and tech. We can't do away with it. These days, everything is moving with technology. Therefore, we are encouraging our women or ladies to be involved. We need to sponsor them. We need to advise them, give them the hope so that they can be in there. A lot of ladies are afraid of science, but these days, science is moving the world. We should also help our lecturers or lecturers. We should give them the necessary support. We should equip them. We should give them whatever it takes so that they can do more research. Give them money for research, for them to also compete with the world so that they can do more in science and technology to help our ladies. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to say much. If you go to Cairn University, whereby they do more science, you could see that most of them, or if you go there, there are a lot of programs. Even now, we have a lot of polytechnics or technical universities also do in science. Most of them comes out without struggling for jobs. Therefore, I think it's important for us to support this science and technology matter. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, thank you very much for the support. And I welcome my students from Kwame Danso. Mr. Speaker, I've learned that 2 of them are sick in the clinic there, so I'm going to take care of them. Thank you very much.
I wish them speedy recovery. Honorable Dr. Samuel.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. And let me commend the maker of the statement regarding the International Day for Women and Girls in Science. The theme, as was stated, unpacking STEM careers, her voice in science. Mr. Speaker, in this country, it looks like we have more women than men. But many a times, we tend to have more men in jobs than women after adolescent age. STEM, Mr. Speaker, is like a product that you are selling. How you package it and how you sell it is how it can be bought. And I believe that many a times, when we leave primary education, our women tend to be looking at more female-dominated careers. As such, it informs the kind of program they tend to offer. Mr. Speaker, I think there has to be some consequential measures that we as a country will take. Other than that, it will remain an annual event and we'll make statements and we'll come back 10 years again to the same story. We as a country, Mr. Speaker, I believe we have a STEM policy. How can we make this policy more biased so the parity that we've been able to achieve in our second cycle education, we can achieve same in the STEM careers? Because, Mr. Speaker, every nation is going to do well and be very competitive depending on the number of people they have in STEM education, especially at the tertiary level. And Mr. Speaker, if you also want to talk about good TVET education, that means we need a very grounded system in our STEM education, because a good STEM person can be a good TVET person. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe that we shouldn't just make this statement, but we should require the Ministry of Education to give us some measures, some strategic direction that can help us to look at some numbers, some objectives. So in 10 years from now, when we are sitting in this chamber, we can review and go back to see how much we've been able to improve on our STEM education as far as females or women and girls are concerned. How attractive are we making STEM education to our girls while they are young, and how are we making them attractive to them while they are in second cycle education? Many a times, we tend to have more girls in arts bias, non-science program. What is informing it? It's because that the basics is not grounded enough, because they say they are not attracted to mathematics and maybe the language. Mr. Speaker, if we can make it attractive and can make sure that they are all doing well at the primary level, when they get to the second cycle, their willingness to opt for STEM education will be something that will be easy on to do. So, Mr. Speaker, don't let us just make these statements as we commend the maker of the statement, but we need to have some direction as a country, and where do we want to get to, or what kind of level do we want to achieve as a nation as far as parity is concerned when it comes to STEM education. In fact, when a woman is in STEM education, their perfection is such that it cannot be matched by most men. So, Mr. Speaker, it's a very critical thing that we have to take note of. And many a times, those within the small towns, we call them the villages, we don't pay attention to them. And that's where a lot of girls also come from. So they don't get the foundation. So it becomes very difficult for them to compete when they get to the second cycle level. So please, let's relook and pay some more attention to those in the small towns so that we can prepare them to be very competitive at the second cycle level. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Nawani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. The International Day of Women in Science is set aside to encourage more girls and women to study science and take up jobs in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And the gender equality that we are talking about is not only limited to the political area, it is also have been left behind. If you take developed countries, like where I studied, in Russia, when it comes to medicine, medicine is a course for women. If you are in a class of 10 students, you have about 7 or 8 of them being women and only 2 males. In Ghana, I believe the system is also approaching like that, where there are a lot of girls now being admitted for the medical course. As I speak, my own 2 daughters are studying medicine in Kolebu and then Konfanoche. But when it comes to the engineering, in Ghana, that is where the problem still is. Where most women do not pick up the engineering courses. And so we should take steps to ensure that as parents, we encourage our women to pick up those courses. And when even they finish and they are employed, I understand that there's some form of discrimination as they progress up the ladder. Either the pay is not equal, or when it comes to appointing something like in mining, for example, when they have to appoint an underground manager. There are women who are mine captain, probably, or shift boss, but when it comes to appointing them as underground manager, they don't appoint them. And this is where we should be, as a nation, we should try and correct it. In Ghana, the contribution of women in science, like other speakers have already mentioned, is not small. When I was doing my house job, we had one professor, Efwa Hesse, a pediatric surgeon, that was doing marvelous well. That was, I'm speaking about 30 years ago. And she was already a professor, pediatric surgeon, and she was doing marvelously very well. What men can do, probably women can do it better. If you take going to space, Valentina Tereshkova of Russia is also a cosmonaut, somebody who have joined the men to also be able to go to space. And she studied mathematics, physics, etc., like the men, to qualify to go to space, like, any other person. So we need to encourage our women. We need to encourage the women because they form about 51% of the population. Unless we pull them along, unless we carry them along, we will only be developing less than half or less than 50% of our workforce. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I recognize Honorable Professor Grace Ayensu Dankwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, my sister, Honorable from Ladade Kotopo, for the commendation, and thank you for the rest of the speakers. I tend to agree with most of the statements that have been made. Mr. Speaker, for those of us who are women in science and technology, it is a very, very difficult, arduous, tedious, and very long journey that we have to go through. As a surgeon specialist, I have gone through maybe 17 years of postgraduate education just to be a surgeon specialist. And it is very difficult for girls, especially when it comes to cultural norms and the things that girls are expected to do. It makes science very difficult for us. And so I will go on a different angle and talk about mentorship. I think that on a personal note, all the women in this room must take exceptional interest in young girls who want to go into science. Oftentimes, women, we don't see other women as mentors. And so we should really, really make an effort to do that. For me, in my constituency, because I find myself as maybe one of the few women in my field, I try to even go down and teach in the schools. I go to primary schools and I teach science. Maybe it's just basic biology. Sometimes I go to the secondary schools and I give speeches. Sometimes it just depends. I have a girl group and I have maybe monthly meetings with them just to encourage them to stay in science. Because of our cultural norms, it gets very difficult, and oftentimes girls need other girls to support girls. So we also need men who might call he for she's, who would support the women and encourage our young girls to get into science. It is a difficult field, it is not easy, and oftentimes when you look at the traditional ways that girls are expected to live, it makes it very difficult. So I commend again the maker of the statement, or the originator of the statement, and I'm also humbled and appreciative that she brought my name up as one of the women in science. And I also want to reassure the House and my constituent that I will continue to be an example for women, and not just for women in science, but basically women in education, and I'll continue to champion that cause within the constituency. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Haji Aladi Ayamba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the statement ably made by my colleague, Honorable Rita. Mr. Speaker, the issue of science, technology, and mathematics is something that has been long overdue. We've been discussing this issue long in day in, day out for long years. It's quite difficult. Many a times when you go back to the schools, you realize that stereotyping is one of the measures or issues that discourage the girl child. And on this, I will say we need to involve the teachers as much as we can, the science teachers. Just as my colleague, Prof, has just stated, we need to involve them and also support them so that they would bring along or pull along the girl child. It's good that we catch them young. Mr. Speaker, in the good old days when I was in the classroom, we had something like science corners. In the classroom, a corner is created with so many items there, simply to teach simple things that are needed in that particular level by the teacher. And children take interest. When you catch them young, they definitely will go along with you. But also, Mr. Speaker, there is one issue that we shouldn't forget. Sometimes it is the funding, because some items are bought, and if the schools do not have them, the little they have, when it's done with, they are unable to do the practicals that much. So we need to support the schools so that they will get the items or materials that are needed. The girl child is always ready to learn, especially when the encouragement is there. And when I talk of encouragement, I'm talking of support. And also, if the teachers are able to manage them, to understand that they are more or less equal with their colleague boys or males, it will go a long way to help. Mr. Speaker, we may look at it to be that easy, but because we have not caught many of them young, they even get halfway and then they stop. I was very enthused some time ago when I saw on the television a whole crew of only women. That was on the 20th of February 2024, who flew Persian Air from Tamale to Accra, and the flight was OP178. I was so happy that I remained glued to the television without, when even they ended talking about it, I had forgotten, because it's like, wow. Because I know for sure, if passengers had been told that it's only women that are going to fly the aircraft from Accra to Tamale, if it were only female that are going to fly it, and there was an option given, I will not be surprised that some people would have said, no, we wouldn't go. But here we are. They did it. Hooray to them. They did very well. And the captain was one Eva Jichuru. That was the captain. Later in the day, that same evening, they had a flight again from Accra to Kumasi at about 6:44. I mean, if we give the same opportunity and understand that we all, both men and women, girls and boys, have the same learning ability, I think that, as we have always said, we are not intending to take everything away from the men, but we will put up to the extent that we can do it better than the men. So, Mr. Speaker, just as has been said, I will encourage us MPs to also take it on ourselves, to check in our schools where the girl child is doing well, encourage them, support them, and also talk with the teachers. As well, now that we have special teachers for those days it was a general subject, but now we have specific teachers for science and mathematics. We can talk with them, support them, give them the necessary encouragement, and I think it will go a long way to help us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute.
Thank you so much. I give the floor to Minority Chief Whip. Then we have come to the end of this statement.
Speaker, I am grateful for recognizing me. Let me commend our colleague for Dade Kotopon, who nudged this House by bringing subject matter to the House floor. Speaker, just a few words, and probably take it from where my colleague ended on the role of teachers. And now we are told they are not called teachers, they are called facilitators. Their role in this whole advocacy and the scheme of things in terms of girl-child education in science. So I'm all for it. I think it's a good advocacy. However, we also need to tread with a bit of caution. Where a lady or a girl is strongly averted to a particular subject area, it mustn't be the case that necessarily that girl have to be pushed in the area of science, because our children are gifted in diverse ways, and so is the Creator himself, who gives gifts in diverse ways. So there are people who will be gifted in the area of science. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we should encourage them in the area of science, but it must not be mandatory that all girls must necessarily be pushed onto that tangent. Where the talent and the gifts are different, we must appreciate it as such, and so is the Creator himself. Speaker, there has been a policy on TVET, and governments that have come and gone have blazed the trail in this direction. There have also been a policy in the area of STEM education, girl-child education, the area of science. The question and challenge has always been the oxygen to prosecute this. And so we will call on the ministry that if it is something that finds favor with them, the necessary support. And this House has the mandate. Our Committee on Education can get the ministry to take this as a variable in their scheme of things. After all, now we have free SHS, which has come to stay. We should be able to get a necessary support from the ministry for science education. It should be one of our flagship educational projects as a country. Speaker, the teaching of science has always been a challenge in our schools because we don't relate. The Americans are where they are because of hands-on education. We often tend to allow these concepts to be seen as some abstract concept. So when my colleague was mentioning the role of teachers, I was touched and felt this is an area we must pay attention to. There should be a conscious effort, dedicated effort to direct the effort of our teachers, facilitators. We must teach our kids via hands-on. Chemical reactions, chemistry, chemical reaction, physics concept must be demystified. And it's our way of life. They are preparing okra soup. There is chemistry there. The pepper we put in reacts with the tomatoes and the oil. That is how we should relate. And they must come to appreciate that science is nothing but our way of life. And once they are able to appreciate it, then they can get creative and to be able to come up with initiative. So for me, that is the way out. Because science, without our ability to resolve our problems, is nothing. If we teach them all the science theories and they imbibe all the theories, and they cannot resolve our daily lives with these science principles, then we are not making progress as a country. And for me, that is the thrust of it. And if we can focus on hands-on education for our girls to appreciate, because there's a lot of science in the kitchen, and they don't need to go far. The examples are in the kitchen. The examples can be demonstrated practically at the kitchen. And when they do that, they can better appreciate the concept of science education. Speaker, our goal should be towards ensuring that when the science concepts are taught and demystified, it should lead to problem solving. We should be able to solve problems in our lives. Otherwise, we are not making progress as a country. I want to commend the maker of the statement, and I think that going forward, probably, Speaker, I will not invite you to make any consequential directives. Probably, when the Education Committee is finally formed, this is a matter they have to take up in their daily deliberations, especially in the area of getting facilitators to teach this science concept in a hands-on approach and in a manner that solves our daily lives. I think if we're able to do this, this is when we'll be making a meaningful effort towards solving our problem. Joe Aggrey has said it, that when you educate a woman, you educate the entire nation. That is not lost on us, but the necessary funding which will serve as the oxygen to prosecute this business must not be denied of this challenge. Speaker, I thank you, and I commend the maker of the statement. I'm grateful.
Thank you very much. I intend to direct that the statement be referred to the minister responsible for education for the necessary action. There is another statement on the 38th ordinary section of the Assembly of the African Union, starting from 15th to 16th February 2025, in the person of Ibrahim Zuera Mohammed. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to make this statement in relation to the upcoming ordinary session of the Assembly of the African Union. Mr. Speaker, the heads of states and government of the member states of the African Union will gather for the 38th ordinary session of the Assembly of the Union on 15th to 16th February 2025 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. This annual gathering, Mr. Speaker, of the leaders of the AU is preceded by the Permanent Representatives Committee meetings and the Executive Council meetings. Mr. Speaker, this year's assembly is significant for Ghana because the AU Assembly, through its decision 884 of 2024, designated the theme of the year for the 2024 as, and I quote, "Justice for Africans and People of African Descent Through Reparations," unquote. Mr. Speaker, the Assembly Decision 884 was to implement the outcome of the Accra Reparations Conference of November 2023, which was co-organized by the African Union Commission and the government of Ghana. The outcome document of the Accra Reparations Conference is the Accra Proclamations on Reparations. Mr. Speaker, at the 37th ordinary session of the Assembly of the Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, from 17th to 18th February 2024, the Assembly adopted the decision of delegates who participated in the Accra Reparations Conference from 14th to 17th November 2023 in Accra, Ghana, and expressed their appreciation to the government of Ghana and the African Union for co-organizing and conducting the conference. They acknowledged the invaluable statements of heads of the AU and for the support and contribution provided by the Union to the conference. They recognized that the Accra Reparations Conference, which was convened with a shared commitment to addressing historical injustices
and injurious crimes committed against Africans and the people of African descent through transatlantic enslavement, colonization, and apartheid, to address the inequities present in the international economic and political orders as a demonstration of the African Union's commitment to advancing the cause of reparatory justice and healing for Africans and for all people of African descent. Mr. Speaker, the Accra Reparations Conference was therefore in fulfillment of the decision 884 taken in February 2023 at the 36th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government of the African Union, endorsing the Government of Ghana's proposal to co-organize with relevant stakeholders and host an international conference towards, I quote, building a united front to advance the cause of justice and the payment of reparations to Africans, unquote. The Accra Proclamation on Reparations had proposed the establishment of certain mechanisms for the institutionalization of the reparation agenda in Africa. The mechanisms include, Mr. Speaker, 1, the President of Ghana was appointed by the Assembly as the champion on reparations. 2, Committee of Experts on Reparations to develop an African common position on reparations. 3, Reference Group of Legal Experts to work in close coordination with the African Union, led by the Commission and including the judicial and quasi-judicial organs of the Union. 4, Global Reparations Fund based in Africa to work in collaboration with the African Union to advance the campaign of the African Union on reparations. And finally, Mr. Speaker, Transcontinental Partnership Framework embracing the AU, CARICOM, and the African diaspora in Latin America, North America, Europe, and UK, and elsewhere in the world to build a strong common front among them in pursuit of reparations and reparatory justice at the global level. Mr. Speaker, His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, in his capacity as champion for the theme of the year 2025 on reparations, will therefore be presenting a report to the Assembly of the Union after the official launch of the theme of the year. This year's AU Assembly will also, inter alia, appoint the new chairperson of the AU Commission and the new deputy chairperson, as well as confirm the elections of the new 6 incoming commissioners. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to make this statement in anticipation of a grand meeting of the Union. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. The floor is now Honorable Kojo Nkrumah.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the statement that was just delivered to this House. And as African leaders gather for the 38th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union, we send to them our best wishes to take the right decisions that will support the continent. Mr. Speaker, however, specific to the matter of reparations, if the world, particularly the West, is interested or is minded to pay reparations for participating in the ills associated with the transatlantic slave trade, so be it. And I don't think anybody can quarrel with that. But I think from an African perspective, the subject needs some further examination. The transatlantic slave trade was not end-to-end executed by people of Western descent only. Africans participated in it. In fact, if you go to the Elmina Castle, you will find recognitions of the participation of Africans in the transatlantic slave trade. You also find from our history how we indulged in intertribal slavery even before the white man came here. So if today we are looking to have a conversation about reparations as the way to cure the injustices, it raises questions about whether we are also going to consider paying intertribal reparations. But, Mr. Speaker, more to the point, the justice that is being sought, in my honest view, needs to be directed towards other areas than reparations. For example, the African Union has been talking about setting up strong African financial institutions to mobilize resources to help the advancement of Africa. My view is that it is a more practical and near immediate way to mobilize resources to help advance the African cause as against the subject of reparations. Mr. Speaker, we've also just spent a lot of time and resources pushing what they call the Continental Free Trade Area, setting up its office here in Ghana. There's been a lot of talk about it, but very little trade ongoing. If African leaders are looking at ways of deepening what they call justice for the African people, I think that's another area which is practical, is real, it can be facilitated, instead of expecting a group of Western countries to write checks for us for their participation in an exercise that we ourselves were even doing and we participated in as Africans. And finally, Mr. Speaker, there's also the need for more South-South trade to empower Africans. A lot of young people in Africa are looking for opportunity for African leaders to open up borders for trade and employment across Africa. If African leaders are going to spend time talking about reparations from the West for their participation in slave trade, I think it will be good for them to also include in this conversation how they can fast-track efforts to open up our borders and open up things like South-South trade. These, in my view, are more realistic ways to get justice for today's generation of Africans, as against what appears to be a nice theoretical conversation of reparations from the rest, from the West. We were doing this very evil act among ourselves. We participated in it, which, because a white man didn't go into the villages to go and pick Africans and put them on the boats. Africans participated in picking black people up and selling them to the white man. So we have a responsibility on our own to take immediate practical steps, as we have mouthed in times past, to provide justice for our own people. So as the African leaders gather to discuss reparations, I believe that these are things that they should consider as part of that exercise. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honourable Member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Respectfully, I would want to continue from where my brother left off, especially when he said that that nice theoretical conversation should be put aside. We should ensure that we put up practical reasons or practical means of uplifting ourselves as Africans than coming together, always sitting and talking about reparation. What are we, African leaders, doing to ourselves as a people? For me, I believe that Africa is endowed with the natural and human resources that can be harnessed for the betterment of its people, rather than always having conversations about reparations. Who are we going to take the money from? Mr. Speaker, I believe that in this time and age, we still have the natural resources all across Africa. We still have the human resources that if our leaders have the political will to better the lot of we, the Africans ourselves, we will be able to do it. We will be able to lift ourselves from that quagmire of poverty. Just now, we were lamenting the minority leader brought up a statement about cholera in his place. And my brother, the other time, one of us also raised the issue about meningitis. But Lord, these are some of the things that we should look at solving the problem. And I was happy when the minority chief whip said that it is unpardonable. Our people are dying. Our people are dying from poverty. Our leaders must sit up. Our leaders must look at harnessing using our natural resources for our betterment. So for me, yes, it is good. They may decide, talk about it, but back home, we have things, we have our resources, we have our gold, manganese, whatever. Instead, for example, looking at our